As it stands, California's net neutrality bill, sponsored by state lawmaker Scott Wiener, would in fact be the toughest in the country if it can be codified into law. And it looks as though it has the momentum to do that. Now, I've recently spoken about attempts to water it down by sellout Democrats, and I've also spoken about how telecom lobbyists are doing everything in their power to defeat this bill. But as far as we know, it seems as though it's still a pretty strong bill. We'll have to look at the final text. But the point is that this bill is important because it's so strong. It goes even further than the 2015 protections that the FCC secured. It includes zero rating and a bunch of other protections that strengthens freedom on the internet. And that's really important. But we got really good news about this bill because Scott Wiener, who's the individual that is pictured right here, so he is trying to export this bill to other states, and he's teaming up with a lawmaker in New York to do just that. So according to John Brodkin of Ars Technica, a California bill that would impose the nation's strictest state net neutrality law is being replicated in the New York State Legislature. In California, the bill was approved last month by 2 Senate committees despite protests from AT&T and cable lobbyists, and it needs to go through one more committee before getting a vote of the full state Senate. Today, a lawmaker in New York said he has teamed up with the California bill's author to introduce an equivalent bill in the New York legislature. The bicoastal effort to restore the rights of an open and free internet through net neutrality legislation would cover nearly 1/5 of the American population if both states enact the proposed law, the California and New York state senators said in their announcement. The California and New York bills would replicate the U.S.-wide bans on blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization that were implemented by the FCC in 2015, and they would go beyond the FCC rules with a ban on paid data cap exemptions. The California bill was sponsored by State Senator Scott Wiener. In New York, State Senator Brad Hoylman said that he is introducing a bill today that includes all the key consumer protections from Wiener's proposal. Wiener and Hoylman will try to convince lawmakers in more states to pass legislation similar to theirs, their announcement said. If successful, the strategy could address the broadband industry's complaint that ISPs shouldn't have to face a patchwork of different state laws. So this is an incredibly important move because they're not only teaming up to craft California-esque legislation for net neutrality in New York, but they're trying to make sure that other states do the same. This is great, and as I read the story, I couldn't help but think about how big telecom lobbyists are just seething right now with rage. They can't be happy about this because AT&T, lobbyists for big telecom, they absolutely attacked California's bill, and they put a lot of pressure on Democrats, hence why I did the segment a few weeks ago about how their pressure was working. I mean, some Democrats were agreeing to try to water it down. But the harder we push to protect net neutrality, the harder they fight back. So this is really important, and if we can wage multiple battles in different states, then that makes the job of these lobbyists exponentially more difficult. And that's our goal right now. We want to make sure that we win because at the end of the day, protecting net neutrality is the ultimate goal. So this is incredibly encouraging, and I really just want to go through the details about why California and now New York's bill stands out from the rest. It's because they really do tackle this phenomenon known as zero rating. So what zero rating is this basically this loophole that was left out in the FCC's 2015 order where they secured the internet as a utility under Title II of the 1934 Communications Act. Basically, that didn't stop these companies from exempting their own content from data caps. So AT&T, for example, could say, look, you have a data cap of 10 gigs, but if you use our video streaming service, hypothetically speaking, I don't know if AT&T has a video streaming service, but hypothetically speaking, they could say, if you use our video streaming service, that's not going to count towards your data cap that we have. But if you use Netflix, that will actually eat up data pretty quickly. So what does that do? That's anti-competitive because it influences people to use AT&T's video service over Netflix's. And this is one of the things that the FCC needed to address and what they were kind of signaling that they would address under the tenure of Tom Wheeler towards the end of his career there at the FCC, but they never got to it. And now there's this big glaring loophole left open that states are now starting to address. So I think that as more states pass net neutrality laws, this does strengthen our case against the FCC's odd provision, honestly, to try to preempt them from passing their own net neutrality rules, because I don't know that the FCC and Ajit Pai has the authority to do that. Can they really block states from passing net neutrality? I mean, that's yet to be determined. We'll find out if legally they can do that, but certainly I think that as more states do this, we strengthen our case, because state autonomy matters here, because it's about protecting net neutrality. So look, I just wanted to share the good news. This is a great story, and I'm really happy and thankful that these lawmakers see value in protecting net neutrality and making sure that other states also have net neutrality.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.